Hello everyone. Today's lecture is all about understanding SEO, or what is otherwise known as search engine optimization. Oftentimes, when you do research on the internet and try to understand what SEO is all about, you're going to get a short answer that usually states that SEO is about the content on your website and the people that link to it. Although on the most basic level this is true, there's a lot more that goes into SEO now that search engines are becoming more sophisticated. Today, we're not going to just talk about the content and the links of SEO, but we're actually going to take a minute to talk about the numerous variables that go into SEO and all of the different things that are considered when search engines like Google, Yahoo, or Bing are indexing your website. So what is the purpose of SEO? It's important to understand that. The purpose of SEO is to make it so that your website is seen in the organic or natural search results in search engines. The reason why this is such a big focus for people that have websites is that it will result in free traffic coming to the website over and over again without spending any money. Now, before diving into this lesson, I want to take a second to thank SearchEngineLand.com because it's their content that I reviewed to really be able to break all this information down as detailed as possible. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. I think that the first thing to understand about SEO is that there are two main categories that are really going to impact your search engine optimization efforts. The first category is going to be the elements that you have control of, which we will be calling the internal elements. In other words, they're internal to your website. The second category is going to be elements that you don't always have control over, but you can definitely influence if you know how to do it. So the second category we're going to call external elements, which means that they're external to your website. Focusing on internal elements now. So the three main internal elements that impact SEO are the content you create, the HTML and meta information that you use, and the actual architecture of your website. Now, all three of these internal website elements have a very significant impact on how well your website is going to rank on search engines. So to break it down further, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain each element specifically and talk about the positive and negative things that you can do within those elements to make an impact. And I'm going to do this in each section where the first things that I mention are the most important, followed by their less important counterparts. So let's start off with content. So content, you've all probably heard the saying that content is king. And if you haven't heard that saying, what this means is that if you want to have a website that is successful from an SEO perspective, you need to have exceptional content that keeps readers engaged and is completely unique to what has already been done. Now, with that being said, what are the components of content that are positive? So first is quality. Search engines will look over your pages and crawl your content in an effort to see how detailed the content is, as well as how well it is written. Things to consider are the length of the article that you're writing, the use of headings and subheadings to make the content easy to follow, and spelling or grammatical errors. Number two is research. Before ever creating content, you should spend some time researching what keywords you're going to focus on, as well as reputable sources of information on the internet to link to within your content. By doing keyword research, you're going to put your blog posts or website content pages in a good position to rank because you can find keywords that are low competition and hopefully have some decent search volume. Whenever anybody asks me what keyword tool I recommend to people who want to do proper keyword research, I always recommend Longtail Pro. And you can access a free trial of this tool by going to www.onehourprofessor.com/keyword tool. Number three is keywords. So next is the use of the actual keywords that you want to be ranked for within the content that you're writing. Now, please realize that I'm not talking about repeating a keyword that you're trying to rank for over and over and over again, but instead I'm talking about using those keywords as a guide to steer your content. From my experience, all that you really need to do is understand what your keyword targets are before writing your post or page, and while writing, keep those keywords in your mind and let them happen organically. Next is engagement. So determining engagement for search engines is something that has definitely evolved over time. But now search engines look at the average time spent on the page, how many people bounced from the page, or they came in on that page and then they left your website without clicking on any other pages. And finally, it looks at the returning visitors to your website. And then lastly, in the positive elements for content, we have the freshness. So one thing that people don't always realize is that stories that are very timely and geared towards current events will typically rank pretty well just because they are timely and relevant. This doesn't mean that every blog post you have should focus on a current event, but even the fact that you publish a blog post about a particular topic today is going to give you a little bit more of an edge over a blog post that someone else published a year ago on the exact same topic. So next are some of the negative factors that can happen with content, or some of the negative things that you can do in relation to your content to hurt yourself with SEO. And starting off here, we have shallow content. So if you have content that is very short and not an in-depth post and not very useful information, it's likely that the search engines are going to recognize that and they're going to penalize you for that. And after that, we have ads. So if your website pages are inundated with way too many ad units, this can also work against you, especially if those ad units are considered above the fold. This doesn't mean that you can't have ads on your website. In fact, as we all know, most businesses rely on ads to help stay in business, but it does mean that you shouldn't have the top of your website pages covered with 5 or 6 ad units in an effort to trick the user into clicking on them. Next, we move on to the HTML and meta information. So when we talk about the HTML and meta information, we're focused more on content that is primarily for search engines, although readers can see this information as well. So starting off with the positive factors here, we have page title tags. So the focus with your page title tag is to explain what your content is on the page in under 60 characters. While creating the page title tag, you also want to make sure that you include the keyword targets for that page within the title tag itself. By doing so, you're going to let the reader who is on the search engine see those keywords they are searching for in the actual title tag. But you also signal to the search engine that the keyword is in the title tag, which to a search engine will signify relevance. Next is the meta description. So the meta description portion of the page is very useful to a person who is researching on the internet because it is shown in the search engine results. On a search engine page, this is the sentence below the title tag, which explains in 155 characters or less what a web page is about. Number 3 are the headers. So on the web pages, the headings within the page describe various sections of the page. While creating headers, you need to focus on making sure that the keyword is included where appropriate and have headers that are relevant to the topics being discussed on the web page. Next is structured data. So many people don't even know what structured data is, but it is helpful from an SEO perspective if someone takes the time to incorporate it into their website. Structured data is typically for e-commerce sites or for things like recipes, events, reviews, etc. Now, although we can't cover this in great detail here, structured data is a way of letting search engines know in a very systematic way what the content on your pages of your website is all about. It goes beyond page title tags and meta descriptions, and it really has specific variables that the search engines look at, which are filled with relevant data to show the search engine exactly what the page is all about. Now let's move on to the negative factors of HTML and meta information, or the things that you can do in these areas to hurt yourself. First off is keyword stuffing. If the content that you have on a particular page consistently repeats your target keyword in an unnatural manner, that's considered keyword stuffing. Next, we have hidden keywords. So this is one of the older tactics that black hat marketing SEOs used to take. But an example of this is changing the text to white on a web page that has a white background. By doing so, human beings, they're not able to see the text, but the search engines do. And next we're going to move on to architecture. So having the correct website architecture in place is absolutely paramount in order to be ranked highly in SEO. When Google and other search engines were created, their main focus was always to bring the best and most in-depth content to search engine result pages so that the user had the best experience. One of the biggest things that can hurt the user experience is a poorly designed website or a website that loads very slowly. Now let's talk about the positive factors of architecture, the things that can help you. First is the ability to crawl a website. So is it possible for a search engine to quickly and easily crawl your website through the use of sitemaps and clear link structures throughout? It's one thing to create a website, and it's another thing to make sure that your website is easy to crawl. By default, most websites really shouldn't have an issue with this, but if you accidentally have no follow or no index tags, it could become a huge problem. And number two is duplicate content. So sometimes websites have duplicate content throughout because they have feeds that are aggregated on various pages or other types of ways that the content gets repeated. If that is the case, it's important to utilize canonical tags in an effort to reduce the search engine's chances of finding duplicate content, and it allows the website owner to direct the bots that crawl the website to the correct places. Number three is the site speed. So if you've ever been to a website that is extremely slow, you can empathize as to why search engines would penalize for this. Human beings have attention spans that are shrinking very rapidly, and in order to have a very successful website, the website owner needs to have a website that has an infrastructure in place to help it load quickly. If you're having issues with this, consider utilizing caching in order to reduce these problems. Number four is URLs. So nobody likes extremely long URLs that have various characters and symbols in them to describe products or services. Instead, search engines like it when the URL is descriptive to the particular keyword that is a focus of the page and is straight to the point. And number five is mobile. So something that most people don't even think about is the fact that a handful of their visitors are coming to the website via mobile devices. From my experience, I've seen that these numbers typically they're in the 20 to 30% range, but it can be different in your particular industry. Regardless, it's always a good idea to have a responsive website design so that people with mobile devices aren't left out when they come to your website. And now we move to the negative factors of architecture. Really, there's only one, and that is cloaking. So although I feel most people reading this will likely never come across this particular tactic, cloaking is the idea of serving one page in two different ways. The first page, which gets delivered to the search engine, is very well optimized with keywords throughout and attempts to rank highly for a particular term. The second page is what is actually shown to website visitors. And if a website is caught cloaking it, it could incur a very serious penalty as it's considered deceptive to search engines. And now we're going to move on to the external elements. Those were all the internal things that can happen and can impact a website's SEO. Let's move on to the external elements, the ones that we really don't have too much control of. As important as the internal elements are for a website, there are also many external elements that are just as important. These external elements are the things that a website owner we really can't necessarily control because outside forces influence them and include backlinks to the website, trust, social signals, and geographic data for website visitors. Similar to how we handled the internal elements, I will talk about the positive and negative things that you can do within each of these elements to make an impact on SEO. So first off is backlinks. When you think of the term backlink, think of it as a vote from one website telling search engines that another website is reputable and trustworthy. Backlinks are absolutely essential for SEO because they give search engines an indication of what other webmasters think is great content on the internet. Starting with the positive factors here. So first off, we have the quality of the links. The reality is that not all links are created equal. If a very reputable and established website were to link to your website once, that could be more valuable than 1,000 links from websites that aren't very reputable or established. The idea being that all backlinks that go to a website are evaluated, and the ones that come from very trustworthy sources are weighted and considered more important, as they should be. Next is the use of anchor text. So this is the idea of making it so that hyperlinks to your website have very specific keyword-rich anchor text that has some importance with SEO as long as it isn't overdone. Number 3 is the quantity of links. So the amount of links that come into your website also play a factor in the success of your SEO efforts. This doesn't mean that it's a good idea to collect 10,000 low-quality links in a day. But if a website had 500 links coming to it from various sources over a year-long period, that would signify that the website consistently produces quality content. And now we move on to the negative factors. So first off is purchased links. If a website goes out on the internet and purchases the ability to be linked to and from other websites, then this is considered a negative practice and can result in a substantial penalty with the search engine rankings. Number 2 is spam links. So something that was pretty common in the past was for websites to use services that would go across the internet and they would rapidly input links on various websites in an effort to build a large amount of links to a website very quickly. If a website owner decides to do something like that now, they can be harshly penalized for spam links, which is ultimately going to result in a drastic drop on the search engine rankings. And next here we have the trust earned by the website. So gaining the trust of search engines isn't an easy thing to do, and there are numerous factors which are considered that make that happen. Overall, the idea of trust being earned by a website with search engines is all about creating your website to be an authority and having other individuals link to you because the content that you create is great. On to the positive factors of trust earned by a website. So we have first off the authority. If a website is able to establish authority, then they're going to be given precedence over other websites in search engines that lack authority. Authority is given by getting links from other authoritative websites and getting shares from authoritative individuals on social media within the respective industry. Number 2, we have domain history. So the age of the domain, which is on a website, does have an impact on its overall SEO consideration. If the website domain has been around for a long time, it's likely that it's going to be considered more reputable than a newly established domain because it's been around for a while. And number 3, we have verification of identity. So the idea of verifying identities for websites is something that usually gets covered when a webmaster implements things like Google Webmaster Tools, Bing Webmaster Tools, Google Analytics, and when you tie articles to specific authors by using authorship. By doing so, the website signals to the search engines that there is nothing to hide and the site itself is tied to a real person. And now we'll move on to the negative factors here. So the negative factors, really there's one, is piracy. If a website has been recognized as having pirated content or files such as games, movies, software, any of those other things that can be pirated, then search engines are going to penalize them for that. Next, we have social signals. So this is probably one of the most highly controversial subjects in SEO today. Many experts insist that social shares and authority have an impact on SEO, while companies like Google have actually come out and said that social media has no impact on SEO. Regardless of which side you're on, social media is absolutely essential for SEO because it gives website owners the ability to attract more users to the content of the website without paying for advertising. Now, the positive factor. First is the reputation of those who share your content on social media. By getting your content shared from leaders within your industry, it's believed that those social signals are recognized by search engines and websites will get a boost in their SEO as a result. And number 2 is the quantity of shares. So in addition to getting shares from highly reputable people, the idea of getting a significant amount of shares in social channels overall is likely to give you a boost in SEO as well. And lastly, we have location. So the last external factor for websites to consider with their SEO is the location of the people that are viewing the website. Now, search engines, they're moving closer and closer to serving local results to searchers because those are typically the most relevant results. So we'll go with the positive factors because there's really only positives that are known. First off is the country. So if your website is in the same country as the individual that's searching, it's likely that search engines will give you preference over websites that are from other countries. And then number two is the city and state location. So similar to the country that the user is located in, if a user is in a specific geographic area and searches for a term such as pizza restaurant, then they are more likely to get results for pizza restaurants that are located closely to them. As important as all of these SEO factors are, it's likely that there are still a few other elements which search engines consider that aren't even listed here. And although this is a very comprehensive list of what is known, there is also going to be some unknowns because the algorithms which run search engines, they're not freely open to the public. With that being said, realize that there isn't one or two specific things that a website owner can do in order to boost their rank substantially in search engines. Instead, it's a good idea to gain an understanding of all of these components of SEO and strive to incorporate them into your website on all levels at all times.